For those who believe in forces beyond our understanding, the home is supposed to be a sanctuary. For over a century, psychologists, parapsychologists, and investigators have asked, what happens when that sanctuary becomes a battleground for something we cannot see or comprehend? At least a dozen witnesses claim to have experienced something impossible inside a modest duplex in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Their accounts, documented by researchers, police officers, and medical professionals, raise an important question. Just what happened at 966 Lindley Street in 1974? For decades, researchers have cataloged cases of what they term recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, violent disturbances centered around a specific location or individual. From the Enfield case in England to the Rosenheim incident in Germany, trained investigators have documented objects moving without physical contact, witnessed by police officers, physicians, and skeptical scientists whose careers depended on credibility. In November 1974, the Bridgeport Police Department responded to over 40 calls from a single address. Officers Ed Tomick and John Halsworth were among the first to witness furniture sliding across floors, chairs overturning without contact, and objects launching themselves through rooms. Their official reports, filed through proper channels and scrutinized by superiors, described events that violated their understanding of physics. Fire investigators Jerry Dovell and John Keenan documented similar phenomena during multiple visits, their professional reputation staked on the accuracy of their observations. The Lindley Street case attracted attention not because of sensational claims, but because of who witnessed it. Medical doctors examined those involved. Police officers filed sworn statements. Researchers from the Psychical Research Foundation and New York University arrived with equipment and methodologies designed to detect fraud. What they documented over 6 weeks would become one of the most investigated cases in American parapsychology. The investigation centered on the Gooden family, but the phenomenon drew professional attention because it didn't occur in isolation. The disturbances happened in full view of trained observers equipped to document evidence. The story truly begins with Gerald Gooden, a middle-aged construction worker living in the modest 2-story duplex with his wife Laura and their 10-year-old adopted daughter Marcia. Gerald had served honorably in the military years before, receiving commendations for his dedication during his service. By 1974, he worked steady construction jobs, kept to himself, and was known to neighbors as quiet and unremarkable. In late October 1974, Gerald began experiencing vivid nightmares. He would wake Laura in the early hours, drenched in sweat, describing dreams of being watched in his own home. At first, Laura dismissed it as stress from work. Gerald had taken on overtime to afford Christmas presents. The nightmares persisted. What drove Gerald to finally report the incidents wasn't the dreams, it was what happened when he was wide awake. On November 22, 1974, Gerald watched a reclining chair in his living room tip backward without anyone touching it. He stood alone in the room. The chair fell slowly, deliberately, as if invisible hands guided it down. Gerald checked for structural damage, earthquakes, anything rational. He found nothing. He didn't report it immediately. Construction workers don't call police about falling furniture. But over the following days, objects began moving throughout the house. A television shifted several inches across a stand. Kitchen chairs rearranged themselves overnight. Small items disappeared from shelves and reappeared in impossible locations. By November 24, Gerald was desperate enough to call the Bridgeport Police Department. What happened that afternoon would risk his reputation, his family's privacy, and his sanity. But the alternative, suffering in silence, had become unbearable. The personal cost was immediate. Neighbors whispered about the strange police visits. Gerald's coworkers heard rumors. He couldn't explain what was happening without sounding delusional. But he had reached a breaking point where protecting his family from whatever was in that house mattered more than protecting his reputation. November 24, 1974, 2:47 p.m. The Gooden duplex on Lindley Street sat in a working-class neighborhood where families knew each other and unusual police activity drew immediate attention. The weather was overcast, temperatures hovering near 40 degrees, typical for late November in Connecticut. Gerald had called the police 3 times that afternoon. Furniture kept moving, not during earthquakes or high winds, during moments of complete calm. The dispatcher finally sent Officer Ed Tomek, a veteran patrolman who had handled domestic disputes, break-ins, and medical emergencies. Moving furniture wasn't in his usual repertoire. Tomek arrived skeptical. Gerald led him inside, explaining the incidents with the nervous energy of someone expecting not to be believed. Laura stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, watching. Young Marcia sat on the stairs, silent. For the first 15 minutes, nothing happened. Tomek examined the furniture, checking for loose floorboards or structural issues. He found nothing unusual. Standard duplex construction, solid floors, no evidence of tampering. Then the recliner moved. Tomek was standing 5 feet away when the chair tilted backward, rotating on its base as if someone had pulled it. No vibrations, no wind, no wires or strings visible. The movement was smooth and controlled, stopping at a 45-degree angle. Tomek's initial report, filed that evening, used careful language. He described the chair's movement as unexplained and noted he could find no natural cause. He didn't speculate. He documented what he observed and requested additional units for follow-up investigation. Over the next hour, Officer John Halsworth arrived. Both officers witnessed a kitchen chair slide 18 inches across linoleum flooring. The legs scraped audibly against the floor, leaving marks. No one was touching the chair. Both officers circled it, examining the scene from multiple angles. The radio traffic from that afternoon, preserved in police archives, captured Tomek's confusion. "Dispatch, we've got a situation at 966 Lindley. Request a supervisor. We're observing movement of furniture with no apparent cause. No evidence of disturbance or intoxication. Requesting investigative support." By evening, the Bridgeport Police Department had logged 4 separate incident reports from the Gooden residence. Fire investigators were called to rule out structural damage or gas leaks. They found nothing. The duplex was sound. No carbon monoxide. No electromagnetic anomalies detectable with standard equipment. But the phenomena continued. November 26, 1974. Fire investigators Jerry Dovell and John Keenan arrived at the Gooden residence with equipment designed to detect gas leaks, electrical faults, and structural weaknesses. Both were experienced investigators whose professional reputations depended on accurate, rational conclusions. Dovell had investigated hundreds of fire scenes, analyzing burn patterns and structural failures. He approached the Lindley Street case expecting to find something mundane: faulty wiring, shifting foundation pranks. He left unable to provide a conventional explanation. During their initial visit, Dovell and Keenan witnessed multiple disturbances. A lamp on an end table fell over while no one stood near it. The television aerial on top of the set rotated 90 degrees, twisting slowly as both investigators watched. Dovell later described feeling an oppressive atmosphere in the house, what he termed a weight in the air that made normal breathing feel difficult. Keenan focused on Marcia, the young girl who seemed present during many of the disturbances. He noted in his report that phenomena often occurred when Marcia was in the room, but also documented several incidents when she was verifiably elsewhere in the house or outside on the street. On November 28, researcher Boyce Beatty arrived from the Psychical Research Foundation in North Carolina. Beatty was a trained investigator who had studied similar cases across the United States. He brought recording equipment, cameras, and measurement devices designed to document environmental changes during paranormal events. Beatty spent 3 weeks at the Lindley Street house, observing and documenting. His methodology was rigorous. He mapped the house, noting distances and angles. He positioned cameras at strategic points. He conducted interviews with family members separately to check for consistency. On December 1, Beatty witnessed what he described as the most dramatic event of the investigation. He stood in the living room with Laura Gooden when the refrigerator in the adjacent kitchen began vibrating. The vibration intensified until the entire refrigerator shifted 6 inches away from the wall. Beatty rushed to the kitchen and examined the appliance. It was unplugged. No mechanical cause existed for the movement. Beatty's field notes, preserved in Psychical Research Foundation archives, document 47 separate incidents over his 3-week observation period. 32 involved object movement. 15 involved unexplained sounds, knocking patterns on walls, footsteps in empty rooms, scratching noises from inside closed cabinets. Researcher William Roll from Duke University arrived in mid-December. Roll specialized in what he termed recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK, cases where physical disturbances occurred repeatedly around a specific individual, usually during periods of psychological stress. Roll's theory, based on years of research, suggested that extreme emotional tension in young people could manifest as physical effects in the environment. He focused his investigation on Marcia, conducting psychological evaluations and interviews. His goal wasn't to prove or disprove the paranormal, but to document patterns. Roll witnessed a chair in the dining room slide backward while Marcia sat reading in the adjacent living room. The movement occurred when Marcia was visible to Roll but couldn't physically reach the chair. Roll documented the incident with photographs showing the chair's initial and final positions. Over 6 weeks, investigators documented similar patterns. Objects moved more frequently when Marcia was present, but not exclusively. Some incidents occurred when she was at school or outside playing. The correlation was strong but not absolute, complicating simple explanations. Medical doctor William Horan examined the entire Gooden family on December 5, 1974. His evaluation, requested by police and researchers, found no evidence of mental illness, intoxication, or neurological disorders. Gerald showed signs of stress and sleep deprivation consistent with the disruption in his home. Laura exhibited mild anxiety. Marcia's examination revealed a healthy child dealing with unusual stress. Horan couldn't explain the phenomena, but his evaluation ruled out several psychiatric explanations. The family wasn't delusional. They weren't hallucinating. Whatever was happening, it wasn't originating from mental illness. Meanwhile, skeptical researchers began arriving. Investigators from the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal examined the house in late December. They were known for debunking paranormal claims and approached the case expecting to find fraud or misperception. Their report acknowledged the witness testimony from police and fire investigators, but questioned the methodology of paranormal researchers. They suggested several alternative explanations. Marcia might be causing the disturbances through normal means, using techniques observers couldn't detect. The house might have structural quirks creating illusions of movement. Witnesses might be experiencing confirmation bias, interpreting normal events as paranormal. The skeptical report noted that no incidents occurred when Marcia was under controlled observation by their investigators. This suggested to them that the phenomena required specific conditions that might involve human agency rather than supernatural forces. Psychologist James Michael Kiernan evaluated Marcia for evidence of psychological trauma that might manifest in attention-seeking behavior. His assessment, while respecting the witness testimony, noted that adolescents under stress sometimes engage in elaborate deception to gain control over chaotic situations. Marcia had been adopted, creating potential identity issues. The sudden attention from investigators might reinforce behaviors that generated that attention. Other researchers pointed to the house itself. Built in the 1920s, the duplex might have settling issues creating movements observers misinterpreted. Vibrations from nearby traffic could cause objects to shift. Temperature changes might create pressure differentials moving lightweight items. Each skeptical explanation addressed specific incidents but struggled to account for the full pattern. Traffic vibrations couldn't explain objects moving in carefully observed, controlled conditions. Deception by Marcia couldn't explain incidents when she was verifiably elsewhere. Structural issues couldn't account for the deliberate, controlled nature of movements witnessed by trained observers. the skeptical community remained divided. Some investigators believed the case involved fraud sophisticated enough to fool experienced observers. Others acknowledged they couldn't provide satisfactory conventional explanations for all documented incidents. Several aspects of the Bridgeport case remain unexplained by either paranormal or skeptical researchers. The Bridgeport Police Department logged over 40 calls from the Gooden residents, but no official explanation was ever filed. Reports were documented, filed, and the department moved on to other cases without resolving what officers had witnessed. Fire investigators Dove and Keenan filed their reports noting structural soundness and no detectable hazards. But their personal accounts, shared in later interviews, included experiences they couldn't professionally document, feelings of being watched, sensations of cold spots, a general atmosphere of wrongness they couldn't measure with instruments. Researcher Boyce Beatty returned to North Carolina with extensive documentation but no definitive conclusions. His field notes detailed incidents but couldn't determine mechanism or cause. He filed his research as unexplained phenomena and moved to other cases. William Roll published analysis suggesting Marcia experienced psychological trauma manifesting as RSPK, but acknowledged his theory couldn't account for all documented incidents. The correlation between Marcia's presence and phenomena was strong, but incidents occurring when she was absent challenged simple cause-and-effect relationships. The Gooden family moved from Lindley Street in early 1975. The phenomena ceased. Laura and Gerald divorced within 2 years, the stress of the events contributing to the dissolution of their marriage. Gerald returned to construction work, rarely discussing the incidents. Laura moved to another state. Marcia, as an adult, declined most interview requests. In rare public statements, she acknowledged experiencing something unusual during that period but couldn't explain what it was or why it happened. She reported leading a normal adult life free from similar disturbances. The duplex at 966 Lindley Street changed hands several times over subsequent decades. New residents reported no unusual activity. Whatever occurred there in late 1974 didn't repeat under different occupants. Questions persist about what documentation might exist in police archives never publicly released. Officers filed reports, but were all incidents documented? Did some witnesses decline to go on record? The official paper trail provides fragments, but not complete answers.
We are deep in the case now. Don't let YouTube bury this file. To keep watching videos like this, you need to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Please leave a comment telling me where you're watching this video from. Now, back to the shadows.
Those who believe the Gooden family experienced genuine paranormal phenomena point to the credibility of witnesses. Police officers with no motive to fabricate. Fire investigators whose careers depended on accurate reporting. Medical doctors who found no evidence of mental illness. These weren't casual observers prone to misperception. They were trained professionals documenting observations through official channels. Believers note the patterns matching other documented poltergeist cases worldwide. The Enfield case in England showed similar phenomena centered around adolescent girls. The Rosenheim case in Germany involved trained engineers witnessing unexplained electromagnetic effects. The Bridgeport case fits established patterns rather than presenting unique claims. However, skeptics note that no incidents were captured on film despite multiple cameras present during the investigation. Researchers documented aftermath, moved objects, changed positions, but never captured movement itself. This absence of direct physical evidence weakens claims that something genuinely paranormal occurred. Skeptics also point to psychological explanations. Marcia, experiencing adoption-related identity issues, might have unconsciously sought attention through elaborate deception. Stress within the Gooden family might have created conditions where normal events were interpreted as supernatural. Group psychology might explain why multiple witnesses reported similar experiences, shared expectation creating shared perception. The timing raises questions. Phenomena began when family stress was high and ceased when the family moved. This pattern suggests psychological rather than supernatural causation. whatever was happening tied to the family's circumstances rather than the location itself. Others point to the possibility of sophisticated fraud. Magicians and skeptical investigators have replicated supposed poltergeist phenomena using techniques invisible to casual observers. Fishing line, careful timing, confederates. These tools could create convincing illusions of paranormal activity. Perhaps investigators were too trusting, missing signs of deception beneath their observation. The debate continues among researchers. Each explanation addresses some evidence but struggles with contradictions. Fraud doesn't explain incidents when Marcia was under controlled observation elsewhere. Psychological stress doesn't account for trained investigators witnessing physical phenomena. Paranormal explanations can't provide mechanisms or be replicated under laboratory conditions. What we're left with is a collection of documented observations without satisfactory explanation from either perspective. 40 police reports, sworn statements from fire investigators, weeks of documentation by trained researchers, medical evaluations ruling out mental illness, yet no definitive proof of what actually occurred in that Bridgeport duplex. The Bridgeport poltergeist case represents something relatively rare in paranormal investigation: extensive documentation by credible witnesses who risked professional reputation by reporting unexplained phenomena. Whether it marks genuine evidence of forces beyond current scientific understanding, or a masterclass in either psychological phenomena or sophisticated deception, the case continues generating debate. What happened at 966 Lindley Street in late 1974? Police officers witnessed furniture moving without apparent cause. Fire investigators documented disturbances they couldn't explain with conventional tools. Researchers spent weeks observing, measuring, and documenting phenomena that violated their understanding of physics. A family was torn apart by stress and uncertainty. 40 years later, the documentation remains. The witness statements stand unchallenged, but the explanation, the truth of what occurred in that modest duplex, remains as elusive as the phenomenon itself. The silence of definitive answers, the absence of resolution, may be the most unsettling aspect of all. Perhaps some questions about the nature of reality, about what exists beyond our current understanding, aren't meant to be answered definitively. Perhaps they exist to remind us that the universe still holds mysteries, that the boundary between the explainable and the inexplicable remains permeable, and that sometimes the most credible witnesses are those left standing in confusion, unable to explain what they know they experienced. The Bridgeport poltergeist case endures not because it provides answers, but because it continues asking questions that challenge both believers and skeptics alike.
We made it out of this one, but the darkness runs deep. If you think you can handle it, check out the other cases on the channel. Don't risk losing the signal. Like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. The next investigation is starting now.